Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Eagles pregame show here on Philly Sports Sports, brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports Sports, save $20 off your first purchase. Today, the Eagles are finally playing at 1 o'clock. Finally! To get the Eagles done early and don't have to stay up until 12 o'clock in the morning watching the Eagles. Today, the Eagles look to stay undefeated as they take on the 2-1 Washington Commanders at the Link. My name is Benjamin Goldstein. I am joined by Sam Hine, who is back home from Florida, and he brought the nice weather with him. Sam, how are we?
Doing great. Like you said, first Eagles 1 o'clock game of the season. Hot take for me here. I do not like the 1 o'clock games. I would rather watch football all day, waiting for the Eagles, waiting all day for Sunday night, that kind of thing. I like sitting back, watching Red Zone, waiting for the Eagles, but I know I'm in the minority on that, but excited to get some Eagles football early in the day for once this year.
Yeah, my thing with the Sunday at 1 o'clock games is they're done early. Like, if I'm still in school and I have to wake up, my alarm goes off at 5:30 every morning to get the bus because my bus comes so early in the mornings. So it's like if you're staying up all night, you're not gonna. And I need sleep to function the next day. So if I'm going to bed at 12:30 every night watching the Eagles, it's not a good formula for me, especially on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning. Thursday nights I could do. Friday mornings it's the last day of the week, I'm all right. But waking up on a Monday morning after an Eagles game it's good after a win, but after a loss, it's whew. But today the Eagles take on the Washington Commanders, who are 2-1. Are we going with the Commies or the Commanders? What are we? We got to shorten Commanders. It's too long.
Well, I heard somebody call them the Commandos on WIP this week, so I thought that one was funny, but I don't know. I just think all the nicknames for the Commanders is just all bad. They should have definitely went with something else, and it seems like their fan base agrees with it.
Yeah, with Josh Harris at the realm now, it sounds like he's planning on changing it. We'll probably talk about Josh Harris a little later in this show as my light just turned off. I'm having a lot of issues with this ring light in front of me. I'll go fix that soon. Let's look at the quarterback matchup. We have Sam Howell against Jalen Hurts today. We'll start with Jalen Hurts. His 2023 stats. He's 3-0 with 640 passing yards. His completion percentage is 67.7%. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He has a pass rating of 84.5. He has 100 rushing yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. Sam, Jalen Hurts has not looked like his 2022 self, but how close is he to returning to that form?
So I think that's a complicated question because one of the biggest things that Jalen was elite at last year was the running game, and it seems like so far this season he has not been able to get that going himself. While the Eagles' running game has obviously been extremely dominant, him running the ball himself has not been dominant. I don't know if that's by design. The Eagles front office has told him, hey, you're a $250 million quarterback. You need to take it slow. You need to slow it down. Maybe in these early games, not take as many risks. He's been hurt the last few seasons towards the end, where last year's, he talked about how he was playing the Super Bowl injured. So I think that once he kind of gets that back into his game and the Eagles can become more three-dimensional on offense instead of right now being one-dimensional, that would be a big step for his game. But I think he is getting close. You saw a few flashes last week against Tampa. Obviously, the throw to OZ in the end zone was a great play. The offensive line really made that play happen because they gave him all the time in the world. But it was probably one of the best throws of his career, just on accuracy, placement, timing, all that kind of stuff. That's the elite throw that you need to see Jalen make, and we saw Jalen make last year. So I do think he is getting close. My biggest concern so far is the running, but also turnovers. Obviously, we all know what happened in the Super Bowl with the fumble, and then ever since then, it seems like these turnovers have been really piling up on him. Last week, they had the miscommunication with DeAndre Swift, but people just kind of throw that one away and say it doesn't count, but it does count, and a lot of people just assume that the miscommunication was on Swift's part, which it may as very well have been, but it could have also been on Jalen. We don't know. We don't know what the play was run. A lot of people just assume it was DeAndre, but it's hard to say. And then he made a bad decision throwing down into double coverage to Devontae. The corner or safety made a great play on it, but it was still a tough decision with double coverage down there. So while I do think he has made strides in the last game, of kind of showing that player that he was in 2022. He still has a lot of things to clean up before we're going to get back to that level, and can really say that he's going to be the guy that we saw last year and have full confidence in that he can bring us back to that Super Bowl.
Yep. Last week, the Eagles defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What was it, 25-13 or something like that?
11.
20. Okay. Yeah, it was that
Scorigami.
weird score. It was the scoregami. What did you see from the offense last week?
One of the biggest things you saw from the offense last week was just the continued dominance of the offensive line. Tampa Bay has a really good defense, really good linebackers, decent players up the middle on their defensive line, and the Eagles' offensive line just completely dominated that game. It didn't matter they had Vita Vea, it didn't matter they had Levante David and Devin White. They just flat out bullied them the entire game to the standpoint of where the last drive of the game was the longest game-ending drive since 2018 in the NFL with 9 minutes and 22 seconds off the clock. They just completely were in control of that game. They used the running game perfectly, and that was one of the biggest things that you saw last week is just the continued dominance of this offensive line. I think Cam Jurgens has really stepped in and played really well. There was a lot of question marks about him taking over for Isaac Seumalo. Obviously, he was drafted to be Jason Kelsey's eventual replacement, but Kelsey keeps on trucking out there, keeps on playing, so he's moved over to right guard. And as somebody who's never played that position before, or left guard, excuse me, as somebody who's never played that position before, he's been playing great out there so far. And I just think the running game and the offensive line is the biggest takeaway from the game last week. Is it just seems like no matter who's in front of them, they're going to be dominant.
Speaking of that running, the new Eagle DeAndre Swift has been dominant. 308 yards through 3 weeks. It's the second most in the NFL. How dominant has DeAndre Swift been out on that gridiron so far this season?
Well, it's crazy because he's second in the NFL in rushing yards, and he got one carry in week one, which just shows you how explosive and elusive he's been so far. One of my favorite players growing up as an Eagles fan was LaShawn McCoy, and I kind of see a lot of similarities between their games. Obviously, I'm not saying DeAndre Swift is LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy is probably, this generation's best running back in Eagles history, all-time leading rusher for the franchise. But when you watch DeAndre Swift run, you see a lot of similarities in their game with being able to make people miss, hitting the hole hard, and then getting extra yards. One of the things that Miles Sanders, well, I thought he was a good running back for the Eagles last year, he kind of struggled with was hitting the hole and making people miss. The Eagles' offensive line creates big holes, but getting into that second level and being able to finish runs was a problem that Miles kind of struggled with. And I think DeAndre has done a great job. Once he gets into the second level, he's been able to make those players miss and keep his feet moving, keep the chains moving. And you see he's gotten a lot of big runs this year of, 8, 10, 11, 15, 20, 30 yards. So he's been incredible. Eventually get him going a little bit more in the passing game. That's definitely something that he has been known for in the past, is that he is a great receiver out of the backfield. But you can't complain with what he's doing right now as a straight up runner, and I think it's going to continue as long as they can keep him healthy. And I like that they got him out in the fourth quarter early last week. He's been a guy who's kind of broken down over his career towards the end of seasons. So I think that it was big for them to be able to get him some rest, get some load off, and then with a short week coming up this week, hopefully they can unleash him again.
All right, going back to Jalen Hurts. He's going up against a Washington Commanders defense. What can we expect from the reigning runner-up to the MVP, Jalen Hurts?
So right now, I think the expectation for all of us we have to lower from the standpoint of high flying passing offense. That's something that I've definitely been looking for so far this season. And I think that I just need to kind of take my expectations down a little bit because they are winning and they are dominating the last two games on offense. So I think for the expectations for this game, I would expect a lot of the same. I would expect the offense to be able to move the ball on the ground, eat clock, use the running backs, use the offensive line to just really dominate this game, run clock, keep the ball out of Washington's hands, and just kind of have a nice dominant game on the ground. But I think it's not unfair to have expectations for this offense to be a high flying passing offense. And I think that eventually we're gonna need to see that so far this at some point in this season to be able to have confidence that they are able to score against some of these better teams in the NFL. But for today, Washington does have a really good defensive line, but I don't think that's going to matter. And really, I guess until I see it this year with a new play caller, and obviously Jalen's just not looking exactly like himself of a high flying passing offense to kind of where they looked last year, my expectations are that they're just going to pound the rock and use the running game to win. And I think that's what they're going to do today.
A
But I
little
think that one of the things that we need to expect and for Jalen today and going forward is to cut down on the turnovers. He's had way too many turnovers this season, whether it's fumbles, interceptions. Even if we're not going to be that right now, that 300-yard passing game, 400-yard passing game, 2 touchdowns in the air, that kind of thing. He needs to hold on to the ball in the limited plays that he's going to be throwing because the turnovers haven't come back to bite him so far this season, but eventually they will against better teams. And we saw last year, even against the same Washington team, the one game they lost with Jalen as quarterback last season, the regular season, it was because of turnovers. Quez Watkins fumbled. That's obviously not Jalen's fault, but Jalen also had an interception in that game. So he needs to really crack down on the turnovers, and that's something that needs to start today, and that's an expectation that we should have.
a little ground and pound, if you will, from the Eagles today. Speaking of grounding and pounding, I want to talk about the play that's taking the NFL by storm right now, the tush push, or are we going brotherly shove? What do you prefer, the tush push or the brotherly shove?
So I think the brotherly shove is a little forced. Honestly, I'm a
Yeah.
big tush push guy. I feel like when nicknames come from things naturally, it's always a better nickname. I'm not a
Yeah.
big kind of manufacture nicknames for things guy. It happens better naturally. So I'm a big tush push guy. It tells you exact all you need to know about the play. They're pushing on Jalen's tush and trying to get him forward. But I just think the whole conversation and the whole disgrace to football conversation about this play is absolutely ridiculous. The Eagles aren't the first team to do this. They're not the first to run a QB sneak. Tom Brady got QB in a QB sneak for 20 years successfully. If the Eagles pass the ball to Dallas Goddard on 3rd and 5, he's 3rd and 2, and AJ Brown comes up and pushes him over the first down marker. Is it still a first down? Yes. Nobody cares about that. But then when Jalen gets stuffed a little bit and he gets pushed forward, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. This one's just designed, and the whole that it's unstoppable. Yeah, it's unstoppable because we have a quarterback who squats 400 pounds and a center who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Not every team has that. No other team has that, and that's the only reason that we run it so effectively. And I just think all the complaining about it is just looking for something to hate on this Eagles team because there is really no hateable aspect of this Eagles team, and the whole disgrace to football play and all that is just ridiculous. And they're just upset that their team didn't think of it and also can't do it as successfully as we can.
Yeah, I see a lot of other teams try and do it. So you can't say it's a disgrace when other teams are doing it and failing. I think it's just the Eagles are just so good at it and they've mastered it. I'm also a big tush push guy. I think it fits the play much more. Because it's literally you're
Mm-hmm.
pushing the tush. I think brotherly shove is cool. It's cool for a T-shirt, but tush push like that's football. Um,
Well,
the
did you see the
Commanders.
Eagles pro shop today? They posted it on their Instagram story that they are now selling T-shirts that have the formation, and underneath it says with quotations "tush push" in the
Okay.
stadium. So that
So we're officially going with tush push. If they're selling
if the
shirts, if the
Eagles are
Eagles are
going
selling
with tush
shirts,
push, I'm going with tush push.
all right, cool. That's good for when I'm tweeting out videos of the Eagles using the tush push to score. I can put tush push, not brotherly shove. The Commanders' defense is their defensive line is their strongest part of their team. It's what has led them to 2 wins and 1 loss. What fears you most in the Commanders' defensive line and their defense?
Yeah, I think you just said it. Definitely, the defensive line is their strongest part, and what fears me the most. They have a bunch of first-round picks on the defensive line with Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. They are loaded on that defensive line, and it kind of sucks for them because the back end of their defense isn't as good, so it doesn't give them as much time to hold up and get to the quarterback. But that's definitely the scariest part of their defense. Chase Young, former number 2 overall pick, had some injuries, but his comeback this year has been pretty good for them so far this year. And the Eagles' offensive line has done a great job in pass protection and in run blocking. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a worry today. But if there is one part of their defense that's going to be able to wreck the game, it is their defensive line. And then Kendall Fuller, their cornerback, who's probably going to follow AJ Brown around today. He's a good corner. He's shown the ability to kind of shut down AJ so far in the two matchups. AJ only had 31 yards, I believe, around there in the second matchup when we lost to them. And then the first matchup we kind of blew him out, but AJ didn't have a good game. So that they're going to have Kendall Fuller kind of follow around AJ today. So I think he's their best player on their back end. But if there is going to be one part of their defense that kind of wrecks the game, it is going to be that defensive line. And the Eagles are obviously have the great offensive line, but with all that talent up there, somebody's bound to get through every once in a while.
Yeah, we have a chat from Charles saying, "Let's go, Commanders." No, that's just an unnecessary comment from Charles. Anyway, we move on to the quarterback of the Washington Commanders, or the Commies of the Commandos, Sam Howell. His stats in 2023, his record is 2-1 with 671 passing yards, a completion percentage of 65.7, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. His passer rating is 74.1. He has 45 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. He has been sacked 19 times this season, 9 of them coming last week against the Bills. This Eagles defense has to jump on that advantage.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things with Hal so far has been the 4 turnovers. He's obviously an unexperienced quarterback, second-year player out of UNC, so those guys are always prone to making some interceptions and turnovers and that kind of thing, just because they haven't seen a lot of the defenses in the league, right? They're inexperienced, so a lot of times teams are able to throw some of a little bit of more exotic coverages out there that they've never seen before to confuse them. But the biggest thing with Sam Howell is the sacks. Obviously, the Commanders' offensive line takes a lot of responsibility for that. But when you have 19 sacks in 3 games, that's got to be looked at the quarterback. The offensive line can only block for so long. I feel like this goes back to a lot of the Carson Wentz discussions that we had his last season, where a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the Eagles' offensive line is too old. They're over the hill. They're not good anymore." And then all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts comes in the next year, and oh my God, all of it's magically fixed. The quarterback should take a lot of blame for when there's an exuberant number of sacks, and it seems like he's holding on to the ball for way too long. Being indecisive, I think a lot of that can go back to teams showing him things he's never seen before with his inexperience. He's a little confused out there, holding on to the ball for too long. And the Eagles' defensive line needs to take advantage today, and I think they will take advantage today. Hassan Reddick has his cast off, which is going to be huge for him. Obviously, he was a great player for us last year. Has done absolutely nothing this year, but that can be excuse. I'm willing to give him the excuse of the first 3 games of he's a smaller guy. He's not a bull rusher. He uses his hands a lot, and playing with a club has got to be extremely hard. But now with that off, the excuses are done, and he needs to be able to have an impact. And I think today might be the day that he really starts to get his season going. Obviously, the interior of the Eagles' defensive line has been the star of the team so far this year. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, and that's one of the big things too is that those guys can get to the quarterback extremely fast. Even if the Commanders try to get the ball out of Sam Howell's hands really fast today to try to avoid some of these sacks. Jalen Carter can get there in under 2 seconds. Fletcher Cox can get there in about 2 seconds. Jordan Davis, the same thing if they really get off the ball right. So even if he is doing those quick three-step drops instead of the 5, the Eagles' middle of their defensive line can really get to Howell today, and I think that that's going to be the biggest aspect of whether this game is close or a blowout is how the Eagles' defensive line is playing today.
All right, we are 9 minutes away from kickoff here. What should we expect from the Commanders' offense today?
So I think touched on it a little bit, but I think they're really going to try to get the ball out of Sam Howell's hands fast today. 9 sacks last week is obviously an insane amount of sacks, and that shows that the offensive line is not playing well, but he is also taking those sacks. So I think one of the big things that they're going to try to do is a lot of quick passes, a lot of underneath passes, just kind of get them in a rhythm, try to just get them going try to get them going quick and early. And they might try to establish the run, but the Eagles' defense has been great against the run so far this season. The running game is a quarterback's best friend, but the Eagles have shown an ability to really stop it. But one of the biggest things I'm kind of worried about for this game is Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry has done an amazing job against Darius Slay. He's been one of Darius Slay's kryptonites since he's come over to the Eagles. Slay has done a good job against some other receivers, but McLaurin, a little smaller, faster guy, is really giving Slay a lot of problems. I'm not sure if the Eagles are going to have Slay follow today because of the obviously injury to Vontae Maddox, moving Bradbury inside and then Job outside. So they might have Slay follow McLaurin so that way Job doesn't really get matched up on him. But they might trust Job a little bit more in that situation. It's just going to be, we're going to have to see how it plays out. But I think McLaurin could have a really big day today, especially if he starts to get going underneath. So he's definitely the biggest thing that scares me today for the Commanders offense.
All right. SeatGeek is the sponsor of today's show. Thank you for sponsoring SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a ticketing app that makes buying tickets so easy. All you gotta do is download the SeatGeek app or use codes or download SeatGeek app or go to SeatGeek.com, and on your first purchase use code Phillies Sports Report. You can save $20 off your first purchase. Phillies playoffs coming up. Tickets are expensive. Sam will be at the game on Tuesday. It will be electric. Very excited for that, but now we got to worry about the Eagles before we can get to Tuesday. Uh, let's look at your SeatGeek standout stars. Sam, we don't have much time left, so we gotta hustle. Who are your standout stars?
All right, so my two SeatGeek standout stars for today are Devontae Smith and Hassan Reddick. I've used Hassan Reddick last week as a standout star, and he kind of came back to bite me in the butt a little bit. But he seemed really excited about getting his club off. Like I said, he's more of a hands guy, not really a bull rush guy. So I think he's going to have a big day today. He's also going against the right tackle that was on the Chiefs last season. Obviously, the Eagles' defensive line kind of struggled in that Super Bowl, so I think Reddick's out for revenge. Going to have a big game today. And my second SeatGeek standout star is Devontae Smith. Smith last year against the Commanders in the first game had a huge game, probably the biggest game of his career to this point. And the Commanders' cornerback Emmanuel Forbes kind of called him out a little bit, saying that he wanted to go. He had a horrible game against him in college. I think Smith went for about 200 on him, saying that he wanted to get his revenge on him when they played this season. So I think Devontae is going to take that a little personally, show him that college wasn't a fluke, and really have another big game today.
Yep, Jake. I just saw a video. Jake from State Farm is in the house at the link today, sitting next to Jason Kelsey's mom. So that's kind of interesting. The inactives for today's game. We'll start with Washington. If this pop-up go away, thank you. Curtis Hodges, the tight end. Chris Paul, the guard. Trent Scott, offensive tackle. Christopher Rodriguez, Jr., running back. And Mitchell Tensley, wide receiver for Washington. For the Eagles, Tyler Steen, the guard. Quez Watkins, wide receiver. Rashad Penny, running back is a healthy scratch. Tanner McKee, the third string. Quarterback is inactive, and finally Justin Evans, the safety, is inactive. So there is your inactives for today's game. Let's look at the bets. The Eagles are -9 today. Will they cover the spread?
So the line went down to 8.5. I checked it right before. So a little bit of late money came in on Washington. I do have the Eagles covering the 8.5. It's an interesting number because of the hook with the half point, but I do have the Eagles with the points. And then I have the over in this game as well. The over is 43. And then I have my two locks of the day. I have Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown. Jack Del Rio, the Commanders' defensive coordinator, came out and basically said the tush push was not a football play, and it shouldn't be in the league. So I think the Eagles are going to utilize that when they get close, kind of shove it down, shove it in his face a little bit. And then, like I said earlier, I think Devontae is going to be one of my standout stars. So I think him over 61.5 yards is a good play today. back in Jersey, able to bet. Those are my locks for the day.
There you go. Speaking of betting, the brand new gambling podcast on the Philly Sports Network, Gamblers Are Us, by two new Philly Sports members, Gus Barber and Scott Barber, brothers. The first episode is being recorded tomorrow night, and I will hopefully the Phillies are playing at night so I can get it up on Tuesday. If not, it'll be up Tuesday morning. But the first episode of the Gamblers Are Us podcast will be up on Tuesday. Sam will be listening, getting his gambling insights for when he cannot gamble in Florida. What are your? Let's do one key. We have 3 minutes. What's your one key to the game today? The biggest key.
All right. Biggest key is for Jalen Hurts to not turn the ball over. Commanders, that's how lesser teams beat better teams, is when the other teams when the better team makes mistakes, turns the ball over. Jalen Hurts needs to be safe with the ball today, not turn it over, and I think the Eagles win this game comfortably.
So is this a get-right game for the Eagles? Washington's not a great team. The Eagles haven't played how they should be. Is this a get-right game?
I believe so. I think that one of the biggest excuses that people have been making for the Eagles, I'm not going to say poor play because obviously they're 3-0, but the Eagles haven't looked exactly like the team they were last year, and that is completely understandable. Coming off a Super Bowl, obviously they had the shortest offseason of any team except for the Chiefs. So I think that those excuses are definitely true. But after a month into the season, this is week 4, those excuses should be out the window. They've played themselves into shape by now. And I think that this kind of can be like that the Washington game last year, actually, where they kind of come out and just dominate them from the start, and everyone starts to feel better about them being the best team in the NFC and getting them back on track for for a Super Bowl run.
All right, let's move on to our game predictions, our final segment. But wait, let's look at the fit today on Sam Hine. What do we got going today back in Jersey?
All right, so I brought out today my favorite, besides Jason Kelsey, because he's obviously everybody's favorite Eagle. Today I had to rock my favorite Eagle, Devontae Smith, black jersey. Love the black jerseys. It's a lot colder here in New Jersey than it is down in Florida, so I do have a little bit of a turtleneck rocking. But Devontae, a great player, and I think he's a little bit underrated around the league, and he's definitely my favorite Eagle right now besides Kelsey, and had to rock him today with the nice black jersey.
All right, Sam, give us your prediction. What are we going with today?
All right, so I think the Eagles are going to win this game today. I think they're taking, like I said, I think they're going to cover the spread. My final prediction is Eagles 27, Commanders 17.
All right, I don't think this one's particularly close. The Eagles are due for a big breakout game, and I think it's going to come today. I have the Eagles 34-10. I don't think this one's a competitive game.
Nice.
It's the Eagles are due for this kind of game. So I got the Eagles 34-10. It's not even going to be close. Don't even ask me about it. And that will do it for our show. We come down to the buzzer here. Kickoff coming in about 20 seconds. Thank you for watching the show. The Eagles pregame show here on Philly Sports brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports save $20 off your first purchase. We'll play the music really quick. Make sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. Go follow our social medias. All the links in the description. And head over to phillysportsports.com post-game for Sam's recap after the game. Thank you for watching, everybody. Enjoy the game. Go Birds!
Go Birds and go Phils.
Let's go. See you next week.